The slur of racism has power. This week, the Labour Party conference went ahead, but they were obsessed with Nigel Farage, highlighting what they believe to be a racist policy. This was clearly their new tactic. Let's have a listen to the policy.
But look, ultimately, what this comes down to is prioritising British people for British jobs, ensuring that our welfare system is for UK citizens and UK citizens only, and ensuring that that Boris wave of enormous numbers, millions, in fact 3.8 million, is what you would consider to be in the Boris wave. The 800,000 of that one might estimate would get ILR.
What's racist about that? Labour then went on to cart out a policy not dissimilar. Shabana Mahmood's plans were to...
We will soon increase the time in which someone must have lived in this country to earn indefinite leave to remain from 5 years to 10. I will be proposing a series of new tests, such as being in work, making national insurance contributions, not taking a penny in benefits, learning English to a high standard.
Members of the Labour Party then, in my view, went on to misrepresent the Reform UK policy.
The proposal which Reform set out, within about an hour or so of them setting it out in the last couple of weeks, it fell apart in terms of all of the details that they hadn't thought through about how the policy would work. And let's be really clear what their policy would mean. Their policy would mean that people who are in Britain, who maybe have family here, who have been working for many years, maybe set up a business, part of the community, they would be taken out of the community and not allowed to continue as part of our country. And I think
that's not true. That's not what was said. And then members of the Labour Party continued to denigrate Nigel Farage and his policy, calling it racist, which implied he's a racist and those who support him are also racist too.
He must call his scheme to round up and deport our French, our Indian, our Caribbean neighbours who already have indefinite leave to remain what it is. It is racist. I say not in our country, not in our name, not in our time.
Well, I do think that it's a racist policy. I do think it's immoral. It needs to be called out for what it is.
David Lammy even went as far as to say this.
I will leave it for the public to come to their own judgments about someone who once flirted with Hitler Youth when he was younger. That is for the public.
He later retracted that. The timing, however, as ever, was off, as usual, as one of the biggest ever race-religion rows culminated in the death of two innocent Jewish men protecting Jewish people from an Islamist threat. A shooting on Yom Kippur, the perpetrator a Syrian-born British national who wore a dummy suicide belt.
Our Deputy Prime Minister, David Lammy, and before I do, please.
Shame on you! Shame on you!
Now, I'm not saying that I lay any blame on Keir and his party for this synagogue attack, and some might say his party were justified in placing the racist slur on Nigel Farage's policy. But the accusation of racism is a serious one and can have devastating consequences.
This language will incite and encourage the radical left. I'm thinking of Antifa and other organisations like that. It directly threatens the safety of our elected officials and our campaigners.
The synagogue attack, in my view, was a racist-fuelled terrorist attack. What's happening here in the UK regarding Reform UK's immigration policy, in my view, is not racism. What is happening here is reasonable outrage that people who have come here illegally and many legally, taking from the economy, having put nothing into it. That's what Nigel Farage is talking about. Racism is often exacerbated by mass migration, where governments fail to protect borders and a culture of anger and resentment ensues. And it results with people who get upset when they feel that when they have contributed, they see their taxes being spent unwisely, whilst those who have come here illegally live rent-free for years. You could argue that Nigel's policies would help to prevent racism. I know what racism is, and I know it is a form of hate, and I know what it can cause, and we saw it firsthand the other day. So instead of calling policies that ensure people who come to this country from abroad pay their way, instead of calling them racist, instead of exacerbating the problem by throwing out slurs to people brave enough to see the problem, how about those in power, and by that I mean the Labour Party, quit with the distractions and name-calling and get on with the job of securing our borders? Well, I'm joined now by political commentator Fahima Mohammed. Fahima, welcome to the programme. Now, look, what I was doing there was really looking at the difference between actual real racism and somebody suggesting a policy that would protect this country from people who have come here, A, illegally and then not paying their way, or people who've come here legally and not paying their way. So that is what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about being horrible to people who, I don't care what colour people are. I want them to get involved in the economy and pay their way and be part of this country. So what do you think? What are your thoughts?
I hear what you're saying, Nana, and I'm not disagreeing with that. But the thing is, we have to understand there is different types of terrorism. There's stochastic terrorism, where leaders will frame certain things in a particular way, where it does cause mainly division and framing politics as us versus them, migrants versus natives, citizens versus outsiders, Britain versus the world. You know, these are the kind of criticism that we will say that is actually being happening. Unfortunately, when it comes to some of the policies of Reform UK, it criticises others for fear-mongering, and yet its own policies have repeatedly threatened families, workers and settled communities. Yes, there's promises of sweeping change from the NHS to public safety, but without clear plans or funding, and a pattern of slogans over substance. And when it comes to the values, Farage lectures others about fairness and integrity, while his record shows contradictions, controversial associations, and policies that risk ordinary people's jobs, pay, and security. He's got a new conservative person that's come in from, Danny Kruger, who's openly called out saying Islam is the problem and things like that. And he would have never done that if it was in the Conservative Party. But people feel that they can be tolerant to be racist and anti-Muslim when they are actually joining Reform. And that's what I don't really understand. And when we are talking about certain things, we need to understand that these things do have an implication on the ground.
So which policies specifically, because you said the policies that are dangerous and damage people's jobs and securities, which policies of Reform come out with that do that? And how do you perceiving that as racist?
Well, I understand that he wants to. The thing is, it's very nicely polished with his policies. No one can really fault it.
Well, which one, though?
Training. And when it comes to the indefinite leave to remain,
right.
Of course, it comes up to a certain amount that people need to earn. So it's not even about racism. It's also people don't understand that he's there not for the everyday working class. They have to earn a certain amount.
Even the Labour Party have suggested that people will have to be able to have a certain amount of money. If you go to any country, go to America, want to settle in Australia, any of those countries will say that you need to be able to support the people that have come with you, and none of them will allow you to bring an unlimited amount of siblings and people who are related to you. So I think it's perfectly reasonable.
I understand that. And that was just one of the things that you asked me. But again, it's very differently from Labour to Reform, because they are not saying that, it's the immigrants. They're not saying it's the Muslims. They're not saying that these are the sort of like uncontrolled people, echoing us and them, as in the other. There is a difference when there is rhetoric that is being spewed to inflame and to be divisive amongst communities.
Be specific. OK, so which slogans and which rhetoric? Because otherwise what you're saying is rhetoric. Be specific, because when you're saying that they're doing something that is not acceptable, then what is that? Give me a slogan. Give me something else.
I just said the slogans, us versus them, people that are coming over here and the migrants that are taking over and things like that.
They've never said that the migrants are taking over. I've never heard that. What they have said is that...
Other people have. I certainly have.
Well, who has said that then? Who?
It's the general public that vote for them, that even say that if the Reform comes in, people like myself and people like even you should not be here. Why is, an African...
They have never said that.
As a Muslim speaking.
Yeah, but you're saying people who support them and you can't be specific which people. You're saying there are slogans.
I'm talking about most people that support them, and even their councillors. Even their councillors. No, they have been fought for racism. You just want to blind
there has been racism
because you don't have another option. Everyone thinks that Farage is the way forward, but it's just a racist party majority of the time. Even if they don't come out that way.
Okay, but just talking over me and not giving me a chance to just respond to some of the things you're saying doesn't make you right. Look, the people who support Reform UK are just the general public and general people. Are you saying that those people are racists?
A lot of them are, yes.
So you're saying that as a general, so you think in general the people that support Reform UK are racist? Is that
I think
you genuinely think that?
Different amounts of people that will vote for Reform, and a lot of groups that will vote for Reform will look at it as a party that is the far right, who is like Europe, who wants to come here. And Nigel has a sort of history of being, part of that, where he will actually say that, you know what, I'm not racist, but this policy that I'm doing clearly, is defiance of that. It doesn't matter what people say. You might disagree.
That's a huge insult to many people who have looked to Reform UK to fix some of the problems that this government have created and the government before that.
Well, they can polish their policies.
And most people would admit...
But it's the truth.
No, but most people would admit that we have a problem with mass migration in this country and it's unsustainable. Most people would accept that. That doesn't make people racist. You don't think we have a problem with mass migration?
I just said no one disagrees with the fact that there should be control and better processes.
Well, that's what the policy is.
Dividing communities, as if to say it's all Muslim that's wrong, it's all immigrants.
They've never said that.
They've never said that. That's what it's all about.
They've never said that. They want people to have enough money to sustain themselves when they're in this country, and I think it's perfectly reasonable. If they don't, then they should leave. And as for indefinite leave to remain, the Labour Party are doubling the period in which people can claim it. Fahima Mohammed, thank you very much.